And I thought, I'm either going to trust my intuition and I'm going to bet on myself, no one else is going to do it, or I'm going to find myself 5 years from now looking back and I'm going to be in the same place while everyone else is ahead. And so that was where the T in bitch came in, which is trust. And I had to trust my intuition. So what I always say is your intuition will make all the sense to your senses, but likely it will not make any sense on paper.
Welcome to Wealth Coherence. I'm your host, Emily Bouchard, a social worker specializing in human development and fascinated by human potential. For over 20 years, I've been a coach to families with successful businesses and leaders with successful careers. And you may be surprised to learn that true wealth is about coherence. When our inner state of being aligns with how we live, give, lead, and love. In this series, we will explore an integrated model to flourish coherently, because wealth isn't what we have, it's who we are when we are fully aligned. Welcome to this edition of Wealth Coherence, where we explore how to live a life of meaning and purpose and true wealth and what true abundance means. And I'm so thrilled to get to introduce you to Kyera Kacey, who is a super inspiration to me. And I only just recently got a chance to be familiar with you and your work through a group that we're both part of through the Dr. Joe Dispenza meditation group. After you go to the retreats, you get to post on these, and you posted something so remarkable and meaningful. I reached out to you, and here you are. So welcome, Kyra, and please introduce yourself. Tell us about, just a little bit about your background and maybe about that post that has us talking today.
Yeah, I was actually like, what post was it? There's so much that's happened in my world between now and then. But, when people ask me to introduce myself, I more like to give maybe a statement or a fact that will have people want to lean in. And so in 2016, I went through a very unexpected divorce, and I found myself in a place financially where I couldn't afford my mortgage. I couldn't pay my bills. And I just was really, really depressed. And I woke up one day just feeling really sorry for myself. And I thought, God, if I'm struggling with how much work that I've been in personal development since I was 17, attending seminars for a very long time. So this world is not new to me. I'm 37 now, for context. So I just had this thought, if I'm struggling this much, like what are other women doing in this position? And so there was this instant desire for me to create financial freedom and then to teach it to women. But I wasn't in a position to do that yet. And so when I healed through my divorce and I moved my business online in 2019, I started, working with women who were going through a divorce, who had experienced infidelity. And then naturally, there was just this organic pivot where women were reaching out to me asking, how are you getting clients? How are you making money? And so there was this slow pivot to actually teaching women how to turn their passion into a profitable coaching business. And then it's just kind of morphed into what it is today. And a lot of people come to me, because they want to make more money, but the work that I do is so much deeper than that.
That is for sure. And I love, just getting a chance. I understand how publishers work, and it's a very evocative title you have. It's, you can show the book if you want, but, rich bitch and
Money
it's
goals.
money goals, right? So it's super evocative, and there's certain people that wouldn't even go near it. But at the same time, when you dive into it, it's super spiritual. It's so much about the principles and core principles of what allows for a truly rich life. And there are a couple that I want to highlight on this podcast in particular, because it's about wealth coherence. It's about heart coherence. It's about the coherence between the brain and the heart and the body. And when we're not in alignment with those and we're incoherent, we are not able to manifest what we want. And a lot of the people that I serve, my coaching practice is focused on inheritors of wealth, next gen family members in really successful family businesses, or parents have been really successful as in the C-level suite executive roles, and there can be a lot of internal conflict around the wealth that's being received, and they have such a desire to have a great impact in the world, to really be fully self-expressed, and yet they're within this larger definition of wealth within their family structures. And I love that, when you look at I love your acronym about what does it mean to be a rich bitch, but where each of those letters mean something. And the H in rich meaning heart centered. And I wanted to know if we could maybe dive into that a little bit, right out the gate, because I think it's so important when we talk about money and wealth.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I just got back from, I did a speaking event in Canada, and I asked the room, like, one of the first things I asked was, like, who here was really turned off by rich bitch? Half the room raised their hand. And so one half of the room was really excited about it. The other half was just like, I don't know about this. Like, rich bitch, what is this? But the thing is, I looked at my life when I started really having people asking me about money and how I was generating it, and I was noticing a lot of people that were wanting to start this business and they were unsuccessful. I really looked at what is it about me and my life that has had me create success. And I distilled that into the rich bitch principle. So I always tell people, you could give me any problem and I'll tell you which principle is missing. And likely it's more than one, but the H in bitch, like you just said, stands for heart centered. And for me, that was really important because I like, you can make money anyway. You can make money illegally. You can make money in stress. But I'm not interested in any of that. I'm actually interested in people making the kind of money that comes from soul work, that, they're waking up in the morning and they feel incredible and they're balanced and they're happy and they're doing everything they want to do. So being heart centered in your pursuit of success is a non negotiable in my community. And that's where that stems from.
Yes, and it's so important. Like, how do you know? This is such a key question that I really live into with the people I work with as well, which is how do you know when it's really coming from your heart and what you're feeling called to do and your purpose, rather than what you get pulled by this kind of pendulum sway in terms of what the culture says it should look like or what the family says it should look like, and wanting to be respectful of the family, and like, how do you actually know what's yours?
Well, I think that a lot of people have been out of practice with their intuition. And for me, I've had a very open channel since birth. And so I was questioning things from a very, very early age. And I knew that the work I was going to be doing later on in life did not require me to know history and geography. Like, I had no interest in school. And so, how do we know if what we're doing is heart centered? I think when you are really in practice with honoring your feelings. And I'm not talking like the kind of feeling where you're like, I'm going to lose 10 pounds and then you don't feel like waking up and working out, so you don't do it. I'm not talking about that, right? We know the difference. But the feeling of I am not disregarding my truth to try to fit in. So, for example, when I moved my business online, I'm very unconventional. And so we always say, if you're coming in to Liberate Her, which is my brand, you're coming into a very unconventional, unreasonable brand. We stand for unreasonable results. And throughout my journey online, I've had more than I could even count times where women, they were just really put off by my self-expression, my swearing or whatever it was about me. And I just thought, there's got to be a way for me to create money and impact without compromising the truth of who I am and without watering down my self-expression. And I think that's when we're heart-centered, when it's like, I accept who I am and I love who I am. And because of that, I'm not going to tame any part of who I am to make you comfortable, but I am going to trust that the right people will come to me, and the ones who aren't comfortable with it will find the right fit for them.
Yes, exactly. I think that that's one of the powers of what we have with the internet right now. And, there's access to so much information, and it's really about what resonates with me. Where's the right, yeah, in a sense, the coherent wave where, oh, this matches mine. And I'm in sync with this versus, ooh, this is really jarring. And it's not really but it might be where I'm wanting to move more towards. Or, for me, there's been a wonderful expansion into not being so afraid about what other people think. And so it's like, oh, what does it mean if somebody thinks that I'm a bitch? Like, that would have like been horrific to think about in the past. And now it's like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm even saying it right now. I'm looking at it. And what does it mean to not be so concerned about what other people say or think about it? And
Yeah.
everybody's going to have their judgments and thinking about what we do and who we are. So why not just go for what we want and what we see is ours to do? And how do you support people when they do have like a family environment that may be like, no, don't be too self-expressed because that could have an impact on us, or that could like, where's the balance with that when there's a larger thing at stake that, you know, you're benefiting from and you're part of?
I mean, what's bigger than your greatest truth? You know, I don't know the answer to that. I just know for me, um, there's no part of me that is willing to compromise who I am for someone else's comfort. Now, but think about like Beyonce, for example. You see Beyonce on stage, she's dressed sometimes in these little, you know, I don't know, bikinis or whatever she's wearing. I don't know if she wears bikinis, but she looks a certain way. But if she goes to a dinner party, she's not showing up as Sasha Fierce, right? Like she's a little bit different. So I think it's okay to be this and that. Like I'm very wild and self-expressed, but that doesn't mean that I'm walking around all day, I don't know, dressed a certain way. It's like, it's just dependent on how I feel. But, you know, this is one of the reasons in my brand we say your next business strategy is a personal one, because we have a lot of people that are trying to create a business. And the reality is your business is an extension of who you're being. It's not an extension of who you are, because who you are at source is divine and you're whole and you're complete. But most people are being afraid. They're being in self-doubt. They're watering down their truth. And that is what their business is reflecting. And so this is why your next business strategy, just like your next wealth strategy for most people, is a personal one.
Yeah, I think that that's why the other age, right? You've got the heart-centered one, and then you have the honor yourself. And I think when you actually invest that
Healing
time,
for the highest good.
yeah,
Rich. The
it's
H
like,
is healing for the highest good.
oh, okay. So there's the healing for the highest good, and then there's the heart-centered. So for me, there's a really important thing in terms of wrapping around all of it, the health and well-being of you as a person,
Yeah.
and, you know, really making sure that you are honoring like what are your needs in each moment, as well as what are the needs of the family, the needs of the community, whatever that might be. And I like that idea of that oxygen mask on first, you know, before you get involved in everybody else's too. And it's
Yeah.
our for our businesses also, right? Like
Yeah.
when you're building something that means so much. And thanks for helping me know more about your acronym. And then when you think about how you work with the women that come to you that might have some limiting beliefs or some things that have kept them needing to keep themselves smaller in order to feel safe, or what kind of practices or what do you encourage for them to expand more fully into their full power of who they are?
You know, every person that comes in is different. It depends what container they come into. But if it's one-on-one, if it's private mentorship or it's my mastermind and we're working more closely together, I'm going to be able to see what their glass ceiling is, whether that is they're not allowing themselves to be fully expressed, they're hiding some aspect of themselves, you know, they're not in their fullest truth. That's all of that is going to be experienced in their business. So yeah, we look at strategy and all of that, but more so I'm actually interested in who they're being, because that's the biggest impact in their business and in every way, shape, and form. So it just depends on the person.
Yeah, and when you think about the people you're working with, that they have a clear sense of who they are and their purpose and what they're going to move forward with, and yet they are hesitant or they pause or they're not quite ready. Is there anything that you particularly do to encourage people to take that leap of faith or to tap into the, like, trusting that's okay if you're going to make a mistake, or how do you approach it?
You know, this is why I'm so transparent with what I've done, lessons that I've learned, because I just don't believe that there's, you know, such thing as failure. I think we are constantly given opportunities to learn and to learn a lesson. I think that's why we're here. So for me, like, I actually encourage my audience to mess it up, like go out there and F it up. Like, go, like, find, it's kind of like you're either on the stands watching everybody else play the game and create success, or you're actually on the field. And if you're on the field, you're likely getting your ass kicked every now and then. So yeah, you might skin your knee, but like you're going to get back up. So I think it's just letting it be okay and reminding people that it's okay. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay to pivot. It's okay to put something out there and have it flop. Like, messy action is so powerful. And so I think just giving people permission to not have to perfect anything is really liberating for a lot of people.
I love that. And I often use the analogy of a garden, right? Like I left corporate America and I'm now an independent consultant, and I've been having so much fun. And and people are like, wait, you're doing so many things. I'm like, yeah, I'm planting a new garden. I'm planting all these seeds. I'm really inspired. Like they all look like they could be beautiful, and I'm nurturing it, and I'm really like looking at how it's all going to grow, and I'm pulling the weeds as they show up. But I don't know which ones are going to take root and which ones may not flourish, and what's happening right now in life. But I'm having a blast doing it. And it's also that sense of, a seed is like this little tiny thing, and it's almost like it's magic. It grows and it becomes this whole other, a plant that flourishes and has fruit. And it's easy, right?
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing is, and I think I'd love to talk a little bit about how you have applied different practices in your life to get to this state where you are. Because I think, especially like with Dr. Joe Dispenza's work and his focus on, the heart brain coherence, there's that sense of ease and flow and the synchronicities that happen as a result when you really are tapped into what it is you're here to be doing.
Yeah.
And it does have that sense of effortless effort. And there's this ease, and it's like really allowing yourself to go where the doors are opening and where you're not having to push so hard, seems to have made a huge difference for me and what I'm doing. What are you seeing with the work you do with the women you're working with?
Well, in terms of like tools, that's where I would go to the Rich Bitch acronym. And, the R in Rich stands for responsibility. So, I went through a lot of challenging things in my life, especially early on, that most people don't ever heal from, or they're not even interested in the conversation of overcoming it. And I realized that if I was going to have a really fulfilling life, or especially if I was going to make a difference for people, which I knew I wanted to do, I was like, how do I talk about freedom and love if I hate myself, if I'm dealing with resentment and all of these things? Like that's not going to work. So for me, it was looking at, I have to take responsibility that, yeah, you might not be responsible for the wound, but you are left with it. And so you're either going to heal it or you're not. And it's like, justified or not, I had a decision to make, right? I was justified in my feelings, but feeling angry wasn't going to give me the life that I wanted. And so just from a really early age, I was, when I say early, like I'm talking 17 when I went to my first in-person seminar, and then I just was going back several times a year. And so that really helped me to look at what are some of the things that are actually in the way of me creating this really beautiful life. And so there were actually many, many things that I overcame before I ever found Dr. Joe. And the reason I resonated with him is because I also had opened up a hypnotherapy practice. I was, certified as a clinical hypnotherapist. And so I just resonated with a lot of his story, his teachings. I don't want to sit down and talk about your past. I don't care. Like, unless it's just factual, but most people don't just give facts. They go into this whole story and they're not free from it. So you're feeling this whole charge. And yeah, I just, that's how I actually decided, like, okay, this person is totally in alignment with how I feel and the things that I believe. And so the one thing that I hadn't mastered when I had found Dr. Joe was the financial piece of my life. And so, that was really my interest once I found him.
Yeah, and it seems like you really turned that around, and you're
Yeah.
really helping a lot of other people do the same. I think that's fantastic. And it really is that's showing up for ourselves. And one of the things I'll just share for listeners is if you're not familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza, he has training as a hypnotherapist as well, a hypnotherapy approach in terms of how he helps you get into the theta brainwave state where you can be much more suggestible to the kinds of ways of thinking and orienting towards life. And you can do it for yourself. And that's what I love about it, is that self-empowerment and
Yeah.
teaching people that they can do that. And so I can totally see why that would have resonated for you.
Yeah.
Do you have a story of how you used all this knowledge and background you had to shift your finances, or like where things, maybe there's something that could be inspiring?
I'd say the first one is in 2019, I made my first investment into a coach, and it was $20,000. I easily could have found somebody who was cheaper, but my intuition said this is the person. And I was like, you gotta be joking. Like, at the time, for me to invest $20,000 into a 3-month program it was just unheard of. And my mind and my body, like, I found that I was having a physical reaction. And that's when I was like, wow, like, this is wild. This physical reaction, this intense fear, just for money, just paper. And I get it. We needed to live and we needed to survive and do the things that we're here to do. But that was really highlighting something for me. And I thought, I'm either going to trust my intuition and I'm going to bet on myself. No one else is going to do it. Or I'm going to find myself 5 years from now looking back and I'm going to be in the same place while everyone else is ahead. And so that was where the T in bitch came in, which is trust. And I had to trust my intuition. So what I always say is your intuition will make all the sense to your senses, but likely it will not make any sense on paper. So it's like this initiation into really trusting yourself. And so when I made that investment, what I started to find coming up for me were all of these, I call them weeds, these limiting thoughts, all of the reasons why this wasn't going to work for me, I wasn't going to be successful. I just happened to have had enough training to recognize that those thoughts had no business
Mhm.
in my future, and they weren't even of the present moment. And so I was able to do a lot of work for myself that helped me to actually move ahead. And so I, found that from there, I just started attracting clients so effortlessly. The more that I was myself, the more that I trusted my intuition. Like people always say, how do you get clients? I've said, we don't get clients, we attract them. Totally different.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so funny because, I'll wake up in the morning and I'll be inspired to do something like write something or post something or invite somebody to be on the podcast, whatever it might be. And I just go forward with total commitment towards whatever it is that I feel called to do. And then it's the most fun to have like a former client show up out of nowhere and say, "Oh, can we start working with you again?" Or somebody contacting me out of the blue and saying, "Hey, I'm retiring and I'd like to refer a client to you." And it's like none of those people were in my mind, or I hadn't like reached out to them and say, "Hey, I'm looking for referrals." But no, it's just following what I intuitively know is where I need to be putting my energy, and then it's so much fun to see what synchronously comes to us. And I just love that.
Well, I have a saying, and it's the more I play, the more money I make. And what I'm hearing from you, which is really cool, because I don't get to hear this from many people, but as you're in the process of supporting your clients and running your business, like you're actually in this experience of surrender. It's like you trust and you have a desire for things, but there's not control, and it's very different. And I find that when I'm in play with money and in play with my offers, they sell.
Oh yeah. And it's so much fun too. And it's like, wait, how did this get seen or what? And it's, I want to write a book. This whole idea for this podcast came out of a book I've been working on in my mind and in my work for 20 years, like this whole model of how to approach wealth and to really be empowering for people. And then initially it was like, well, if I'm going to be interviewing people for the book, maybe they'd want to be videotaped and we can have that as a resource for people while I go through the whole process of writing it. And then it's like, this has taken a whole other scope than I ever thought it would.
Yeah.
And I get to meet the most amazing people and I'm having so much fun with it. And it really does feel like play. And
Yeah.
there's so much involved and there's a lot of heavy lifting and there's money involved in producing it and doing it well. And it's like, well, yeah, of course there is. It's like, it's not, like you said, it's like, if you feel the fear, those are those weeds in the garden. It's like, all right, let me tend to the garden and make sure that I'm taking care of the part of myself that is experiencing that fear, but let it know that I'm totally safe and it's going to be fine no matter what,
Yeah.
that kind of surrender to it, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. Well, tell me a little bit about what's next. Like, you have something else that's come out. What's the next big resource you have for?
I'm so focused right now. We've got my first live event is happening in November. Like I've done a ton of retreats, but I've really been called to do more in person. And so I'm putting on a live event, Liberate Her Live. That's going to be in Nashville in November. And I've got my 25-day program in July. We've got almost 500 people signed up for that. So like there's just so much that is happening. I don't know right now if I'll be, diving into another book, but I would be very, very shocked if there's not another one that comes out soon.
Yeah. Well, and I saw that you also wrote a book about your experience after your divorce.
She Dares is the first book that I wrote, and I pulled it down, so you won't be able to find it. I mean, unless you get a used one, but I pulled She Dares and She Without He off of Amazon because I actually would like to redo those.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so I did have a book after my divorce and kind of went through my life story and the things that I overcame. But those are not even available right now.
Wow. Well, your story is phenomenal, and I know just a little bit about it. So I do hope those come back. Yeah, definitely rework those and have those come out because I think,
Yeah.
there's when people go through a major transition, right? When they go through a divorce, and there's so much pain and loss associated with it, having a resource that allows them to dare to really step into more fully who they are and have what they
Yeah,
really want, it's so important. So
totally. I know. I hear you.
if somebody was listening to this and this is the first time they've heard about any of the things we're talking about, what's a key takeaway you'd want them to have from this conversation when it comes to wealth coherence?
Well, first of all, my definition of wealth is very different than probably anyone else's. My definition of wealth is your experience of self. And that came to me when I started witnessing a lot of women in the online coaching space making lots of money, but questioning their worth, still living in fear. They were afraid to spend it. And I also experienced for myself when I started making money, I recognized, like, even after I paid off all my debt, my bank account was growing, my mentors were paid for in full. There was this part of me that was like, is this going to run out? And I started noticing that I was uncomfortable spending it. And I thought, hang on a second, what is the point of all of this money if I'm still feeling this way? And so this is when I realized you can go from debt to creating a multiple 7-figure business. You can do that. But if you're going to continue to scale, then you got to find a way to normalize spending money, releasing money, being okay with or without money. And so I just found there's layers. If you're somebody that has not grown up with money, there are layers to healing so that you can actually be the kind of person that not only holds it, but you grow it. And that was like the work that I really became interested in. So my definition of wealth is your experience of self, right? We know a lot of people with money, millionaires, billionaires that commit suicide, celebrities that are unhappy, that are doing drugs. So it's like, what actually is the experience with money in our hands that we want to have? And that's really what I started to dive into.
Well, yeah, you're right on. And it is also true for people who've been born into wealth as well. So I think we have much more to discuss for sure.
Yes.
And do you want to share a little bit about your retreats in Ireland? Because it's so special what you create there.
Ireland is, I have to say, it is my favorite. I love all of my offers. I love all my offers, but Ireland is my favorite. It's just special. I've been going there since I was 15 years old. And so I do an annual retreat there. It's only open to 6 women. We're 50% full for 2025, but it's September of every year. And when I first launched that, I did not give any details. It opened up at 17,000 the very first time I ran it. I had my first spot sell within an hour. I had nothing figured out other than where we were going to stay. And that's when I was like, I'm not giving any details. And I had a woman, she's like, I'll come, I'll pay you in full, but I need the itinerary. And I was like, you got to find a different retreat because I can't give that to you. Women are like, we do a lot. And I like to create spaces for women to just trust if they feel called to be there, just show up and let all that other stuff, let it go. I've got you. You're going to get, that's what I always say. First of all, you'll come one way, you'll leave another. You might not get everything you want, but I can promise that you'll get everything you need. And if you can trust that, you're in for a wild ride in all the best ways.
So great. And I love that you took, a place that you love and that you just are so passionate about being there and then calling other women to join you and then allowing that to emerge. I think that space, that liminal space of emergence for us as women is so powerful. And
it's so good. Yeah.
And I love that. Just to bring it full circle from what we were talking about at the beginning, there's so many different facets to ourselves. And I just love thinking about us as these beautiful diamonds, like so many different facets. And, there's one facet that some people might say, wow, she's a rich bitch. And there's another one that's like, oh, she is such a sweetheart. And it's all part of us. And it's this integrated whole that I'm so committed to allowing people to just shine so brightly and know that people are going to see us through those different facets, but we can just be completely whole as who we are in each moment and allow them to see us how they're going to see us. So
couldn't agree more. I love that.
So great to get to connect with you and to meet you. And we will be putting in the show notes how you can reach Kyra and learn about these different wonderful offerings she has, and Instagram and YouTube and the work that you're doing. And so wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Wealth Coherence. If it resonated, I'd love for you to share it or leave a review. This will help others find their way to this space. And if you're ready to keep exploring what it means to live, lead, and give from a place of coherence, head to emilybouchard.com to stay connected. Until next time, be well internally and allow your external life to be the fullest expression of who you truly are.